The Harbinger drifted into the dusk-shrouded expanse, where the lost fleet lay scattered like fallen stars across the airborne sea. The spectral remnants of once proud skyships loomed through the swirling mists, their skeletal frames outlined by a faint, otherworldly glow. Captain Rourke stood at the prow, his gaze steady despite the chill that crept along his spine. Around him, the crew moved with a tense reverence, aware that they had entered a place where history's darkest whispers lingered. Alara was the first to spot the nearest wrecker-shattered vessel with torn sails fluttering silently, caught in a ghostly current. She gestured sharply, and the Harbinger eased closer, the engines humming quietly to avoid disturbing the eerie stillness. "This was the windbreaker," she murmured, her voice barely above the whisper of the wind. "One of the fleet that vanished with the Helm years ago." Carefully, the crew lowered grappling lines and boarding planks, venturing onto the haunted decks. Wood creaked underfoot, and faded markings on the hull hinted at hurried repairs and desperate last stands. Myra's eyes narrowed as she knelt beside a broken engine, tracing the strange glowing runes etched into the metal. "This isn't just mechanical failure," she said, voice tinged with disbelief. "Something unnatural took hold here." Cale moved silently among the shadows, his cloak blending with the darkened timbers. From beneath a shattered cabin, he retrieved a weathered logbook, its pages brittle but legible. As Alara took the book, her hands trembled slightly. The entries detailed the fleet's final voyage, marked by escalating misfortunes, malfunctioning instruments, crew madness, and the relentless pull of the Helm's curse. Each captain's last words spoke of betrayal, fear, and a doomed fate. Back aboard the Harbinger, the crew gathered to share the grim discoveries. The flickering lantern light cast long shadows as Rourke's voice cut through the silence. "We carry the same burden they did," he said solemnly. "But their mistakes need not be ours. We learn, we prepare, and we persevere." Unease rippled through the group. The curse was no longer a distant tale, but a looming spectre threatening to unravel them. Yet amid the dread, a fierce determination took root. The lost fleet's fate was a warning etched in time, a silent guardian urging them onward with caution and courage. As night deepened, strange lights flickered across the horizon, ghostly echoes of ships long gone. The Harbinger lifted its sails, cutting through the haunted fog with renewed purpose. Rourke's eyes scanned the endless sky, aware that the path ahead was fraught with peril, but driven by a resolve as unyielding as the winds themselves. "We sail not just for survival," he declared, "but to break the cycle and forge a new legend." The crew met his gaze, their fears tempered by a shared hope. Together, they would face the curse, the shadows, and whatever storms awaited in the boundless skies. But as the Harbinger slipped away from the ghostly graveyard, a cold whisper brushed past the sails, a reminder that the past was never truly dead and that the Helm's dark legacy still clung to the winds. The sky was alive with secrets, and the journey was far from over. The first light of dawn cast a pale wash over the deck of the Harbinger, painting the worn wood in shades of silver and blue. Captain Rourke stood alone at the bow, his gaze fixed on the endless expanse of sky that stretched above the submerged world. The air was crisp, carrying the faint salt temps of the haunted sea below, and the faint hum of the ship's rigging whispered in the gentle breeze. His fingers clenched around the rail, knuckles white beneath the scars that told stories of battles won and lost, decisions made and mistakes borne. For a long moment, he stood silent, a man confronting the ghosts that had shadowed him since the accident that had stripped him of honor and rank. The weight of the ghost helm, cradled carefully below deck, seemed to pulse with a dark promise, one that could either redeem or doom them all. He inhaled deeply, the cold air filling his lungs like a bitter tonic, and made a silent vow. This journey would not end in failure. Not this time. Behind him, the creak of footsteps heralded the approach of Elara, the ship's navigator. Her amber eyes caught his, sharp and questioning. Still brooding, Captain G asked, her voice low but edged with concern. Rourke managed a tired smile. A captain's mind never rests, Elara, especially when the horizon hides more than just clouds. She nodded, stepping beside him, her gaze following his toward the distant sky currents. We'll need you at your best. The crew's looking to you now more than ever. He turned, eyes meeting hers with renewed fervor. Then I'll give them nothing less. Later, in the cramped captain's quarters, the dim glow of a flickering lantern cast long shadows on the walls, lined with maps and worn charts. The crew gathered reluctantly, their faces etched with fatigue, fear, and uncertain hope. Merrin leaned against the bulkhead, arms crossed, while Kaelin sat quietly in a corner, eyes unreadable beneath her hood. Rourke cleared his throat, the room falling silent. I won't pretend to be the captain I once was, he began, voice steady but heavy with remorse. The Seabreaker's fall was my fault. Recklessness, yes, but also pride. I lost more than a ship that day. I lost your trust. A murmur rippled through the group, some avoiding his gaze, others meeting it with cautious attention. But this Helm, he continued, voice hardening with resolve, this cursed thing is not just a burden, it's a chance. A chance to prove that even a broken captain can steer a course true. I ask for your faith not in me, but in what we can do together. Elara stepped forward, her voice clear. We've faced worse. The skies don't care if we're broken or whole. They only care if we survive. Merrin cracked a rare, wry smile. Well, if you're the captain, I'm the engineer. Let's see if this old ship still has life in her. The tension that had gripped the room slowly gave way to a fragile warmth, a tentative camaraderie forged in the shadow of the Helm's curse. As the Harbinger sailed onward, Elara's deft hands adjusted the course to navigate the turbulent airborne currents that churned like a living beast beneath them. Outside, the sky roared with the distant sound of thunder, dark clouds swirling in ominous patterns. But inside the ship, there was focus and purpose. Merrin's steady hammering and the rhythmic pulse of the engine breathed life into the weathered vessel, a mechanical heartbeat syncing with the crew's renewed spirit. In the galley, the crew shared a sparse meal, the clatter of dishes and low murmur of voices weaving a tapestry of quiet unity. The weight of the journey pressed upon them all, but so did a new hope, a belief that, together, they could outrun the curse and the shadows that sought to claim them. Rourke's eyes lingered on each face, seeing not just comrades but fellow survivors, each scarred by past mistakes, yet bound by a shared purpose. The Helm might be a curse, but it was also a catalyst, a crucible that would test and transform them. As the stars began to prick the twilight sky, the captain rose, stepping once more onto the deck. The wind tugged at his coat and hair, a whisper of the endless sky calling them forward. He raised his voice, steady and clear. Set the sails, steady the course. The final leg awaits, and we will meet it head on. Together, a cheer rose from below decks, a sound that was both a promise and a defiance. The Harbinger sailed onward into the unknown, the cursed ghost Helm secure, but no longer a symbol of doom. It was a beacon of resolve, a testament to a captain reborn and a crew united against the darkness. But beyond the horizon, the skies simmered with threats unseen, and the true test of their resolve was yet to come. The sky around the Harbinger darkened, the usual blue hues fading into a deep, suffocating grey that swallowed the horizon. Below, the abyss yawned like an endless maw, its depths veiled in swirling mists that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. The air grew thick with moisture, heavy and oppressive, carrying the scent of ozone and something far older, a whisper of ancient power that set nerves on edge. Captain Rourke stood firm at the helm, his knuckles white as they gripped the polished wood. The creak of the ship's timbers mingled with the relentless howl of the wind, a tempest born not from weather but from the chasm itself. Around him, the crew moved like shadows, each consumed by their own battles with fear and duty. Maeve's sharp eyes flicked between the compass and the swirling mist beyond the deck. The compass needle spun erratically, refusing to settle, as though the abyss distorted reality itself. "Captain," she called out, voice taut with tension, "the currents are shifting unpredictably. This isn't just wind, something's interfering." Rourke nodded, his jaw tightening. "Steady, we hold the course. Trust the ship and your skill." Jorik's voice cut through the chaos, gruff and commanding. "The starboard rigging's under strain. We need to secure it or we'll lose the mast to this damned wind." The engineer's hands worked swiftly, knots tied and lines pulled taut against the relentless assault. The ship groaned, wood bending under pressure, but held fast. Sweat and salt water mingled on Jorik's brow as he barked orders, defiance etched into every line of his muscular frame. Below deck, the mysterious passenger remained a silent sentinel, their shadowed face unreadable as they observed the unfolding storm. Occasionally, their eyes flickered with an uncanny glow, hinting at secrets entwined with the abyss itself. The abyss seemed to reach out with invisible tendrils, tugging at the harbinger's very soul. Shadows danced at the edges of vision, whispers curled through the rigging like smoke. The crew felt their hearts quicken, memories of past failures and losses clawing at their resolve. "Hold fast," Rourke's voice rang out, steadying the crew. "We've faced worse and come through. This chasm will not be our grave." Minutes stretched into an eternity as the harbinger pressed deeper into the abyss. The winds battered them, each gust a brutal force threatening to rip the ship apart. Yet, within the chaos, a strange calm settled over Rourke. The abyss was a test of strength, of will, of unity. Maeve's hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the sails, her eyes narrowing in fierce concentration. "Captain, the currents are beginning to stabilize. We're through the worst." Relief rippled through the crew, but the shadows lingered, a reminder that this was but one trial among many. Rourke allowed himself a brief glance over the rail into the swirling void below. The abyss had not claimed them today, but it whispered promises of trials yet to come. "Prepare for the next leg," Rourke ordered, voice low but resolute. "We've survived the skybound abyss, but the journey is far from over." The harbinger sailed on, battered but unbroken, its crew tempered by the abyss's cruelty and bound tighter by shared hardship. The skies stretched infinite before them, a vast uncharted realm where legends were born and destinies forged. And Captain Rourke, once dishonored, steeled himself to meet whatever darkness awaited in the endless sky. As the chasm's mists faded behind them, a subtle shift took hold aboard the harbinger. Whispers ceased, shadows receded, and for a fleeting moment, hope bloomed amidst the storm. Yet, in the farthest corners of the vessel, unseen eyes watched, waiting. The abyss was patient, and its grip was far from broken. The air had turned thick with an unnatural chill, the kind that clings to the bones and whispers of forgotten terrors. Captain Rourke stood rigid at the helm of the harbinger, his eyes narrowing as the ghost helm before him began to pulse with a spectral light. Faint at first, then growing into a furious, eerie glow that bathed the deck in ghostly hues. The sky around them, once a swirling tapestry of blues and greys, darkened unnaturally as invisible forces stirred, rippling through the airborne currents with violent intent. A sudden gust tore across the deck, howling like a banshee's wail, rattling the rigging and sending the crew scrambling for hold. The curse had awakened in its full fury. Shadows twisted and writhed in the corners of vision, and a low, almost imperceptible hum grew into a cacophony of spectral voices, their whispers seeping into the minds of every soul aboard. "Hold fast," Rourke's voice rang out, steady but charged with urgency. "This is no ordinary storm. It's the Helm itself." Elara was already below decks, the sharp temps of burning oil and molten metal filling the cramped engine room as sparks erupted from the failing machinery. She worked with frantic efficiency, fingers flying over valves and controls, sweat mingling with the grime on her brow. "Engines won't hold much longer," she shouted up through the hatch, her voice edged with desperation. "We're losing power." Nash, clutching his sextant like a talisman, stood by the navigation rig, eyes darting between the shifting currents and the spectral storm engulfing them. His breath came quick and shallow, haunted memories flickering behind his gaze. "We're caught in a vortex of cursed winds," he muttered, voice trembling. "No chart can guide us through this madness." On deck, the crew wrestled with the rising chaos. Loose ropes whipped like serpents in the gale, and the Harbinger groaned under the strain, timbers creaking ominously. Fear gnawed at the edges of every heart, but Rourke's presence was a steady anchor. "Steady, all of you. Trust in the ship and in each other." Kalen, the mysterious passenger whose silence until now had been an enigma, stepped forward. Their cloak billowed as they raised a hand, voice low and melodic, weaving words that seemed to shimmer in the charged air. Arcane symbols flickered faintly around their fingertips, delicate threads of power reaching out to contain the tempest unleashed by the Helm. "The curse is not just a force of destruction," Kalen intoned, "but a living shadow that feeds on despair and discord. We must hold fast to hope, or it will rend us all." Rourke met their gaze, a flicker of respect breaking through his usual guarded demeanor. "Then let hope be our shield. Stand with me, all of you." As the spectral storm raged, the Harbinger pitched violently, waves of wind battering her from every side. The crew tightened their grips, voices raised in strained shouts and desperate commands. Elara's hands were blistered and raw, but she refused to relent, her mind racing for every possible fix to steady the engines. Below decks, the lights flickered, shadows dancing like wraiths along the bulkheads. A sudden jolt sent Elara sprawling, but she scrambled back to her post, cursing the curse that had turned their journey into a nightmare. "We can't let the Helm win," she growled, voice fierce with resolve. Above, Rourke moved among his crew, steadying nerves and lending strength where it faltered. The shadows clawed at his mind, whispering doubts and fears, but he fought back, remembering the promise he'd made. Redemption was not a gift, but a battle. The cursed winds screamed one final, awful cry before the arcane threads Kalen wove began to bind the tempest, the spectral glow dimming ever so slightly. Exhaustion weighed heavy on every soul, but a fragile calm settled over the Harbinger. Yet the danger was far from over. The Helm's curse had been unleashed and survived. The crew bore fresh scars, not just on their bodies, but etched deep into their spirits. Rourke knew this was only the beginning. Somewhere beyond the storm and shadow lay the true test, and the cost of failure was unthinkable. "We endure," Rourke said, voice low and fierce. "For the Helm, for the Harbinger, and for the hope that still burns in the heart of this cursed voyage." As the skies slowly cleared, The crew braced for what lay ahead, their unity forged in the crucible of the curse's unleashed fury. The ghost helm had shown its teeth, and the harbinger would answer in kind. The journey was far from over, and the shadows were watching. The sky had darkened in a way that felt unnatural, the clouds roiling like a living thing as the harbinger rode the currents with a weary grace. Captain Rourke stood at the helm, eyes scanning the horizon where the last remnants of daylight bled into the approaching twilight. The cursed ghost helm lay secured below deck, its aura a constant weight upon the ship and crew alike. Suddenly, through the thick mists and swirling vapor, another silhouette emerged, massive shape cutting through the clouds, sails unfurling like dark wings against the sky. "Look sharp," Elias muttered from the navigation post, his voice tight with suspicion. "That's no merchant vessel." Rourke's jaw clenched. He had hoped for solitude, but now, fate or perhaps the curse had other plans. As the stranger vessel drew closer, the insignia became visible, a silver hawk clutching a dagger, the mark of Captain Varric, a man as notorious in the airborne seas as Rourke was disgraced. The harbinger's crew bristled with anticipation and dread. Varric's reputation for ruthless diplomacy and brutal efficiency preceded him. When the two skyships anchored side by side in a rare calm amidst the aerial currents, Rourke and Varric met in the captain's quarters. A small, dimly lit room heavy with the scent of oil and old wood. Varric's eyes gleamed with a calculating light as he spoke. "Captain Rourke," he began, his voice low and commanding, "I hear you carry a prize worth more than all the gold in the submerged vaults. The ghost helm." Rourke met his gaze evenly, the weight of his past failures pressing down but not breaking his resolve. "And what would you have of it?" Varric smiled thinly. "I offer you aid. The skies grow darker, and enemies lurk where none expect. Together, our chances of survival and success increase greatly." Suspicion flickered in Rourke's mind, but the alternative was stark isolation. He nodded curtly. "Very well, but understand this. The helm's curse touches all who carry it. Trust is a fragile thing." Outside, the air shifted suddenly. Shadows moved with unnatural grace, and before the crews could fully prepare, the first shots rang out. The Shadow Syndicate had found them. Gunfire and tracer bolts illuminated the sky as the combined crews scrambled to their battle stations. Myra's hands flew over the Harbinger's engine controls, pushing the ship's aged heart to the limits. Elias shouted coordinates, guiding the ship through the deadly dance of currents and enemy fire. Rourke found himself fighting not just for survival, but for the fragile alliance that might yet save them all. Varric's men fought fiercely alongside the Harbinger's crew, their combined firepower turning the tide, but the cost was high wounded men and shattered trust. When the last shadowy figure was driven off, the battered crews gathered on the deck beneath a blood-red sunset. Silence settled, heavy with exhaustion and the unspoken understanding that their journey had become more perilous than ever. Rourke looked across at Varric, the man's scarred face set in grim resolve. "We need each other," he admitted. "But the ghost helm's shadow grows. We must be ready." Varric nodded, a rare flicker of respect crossing his features. "Together, then, for now." As the Harbinger sailed onward, the sky seemed to hold its breath, the storm of allies and enemies swirling around them. The curse was no longer just a legend, it was a living force, and the battle for its fate had only just begun. The clouds thickened, and in their depths, unseen eyes watched. The next move was theirs to make, but the question lingered. Could this fragile alliance withstand the coming tempest, or would it shatter, dooming them all? The endless sky awaited, vast and unforgiving, carrying the weight of secrets, curses, and the hope of redemption.